It is 1805, and the Royal Navy, the pride of Britain, faces a disaster that no one could have predicted. A crucial naval battle goes disastrously wrong. Ships are lost, cannon fire tears through fleets, and Britain's dominance of the seas begins to unravel. For centuries, the Royal Navy has been the backbone of British power, allowing it to control trade, colonies, and global influence. But now, that supremacy is gone. Imagine a world in which the sun no longer never sets on Britain. Colonies falter, trade routes are disrupted, and rival nations rise to fill the vacuum left by Britain's decline. The global balance of power shifts dramatically. If you stay until the end, you will see exactly how a single naval defeat could have rewritten the history of the 19th century and reshaped the modern world. The divergence from real history begins with a single point of failure. In our timeline, Admiral Nelson's leadership at Trafalgar ensured Britain's continued naval supremacy. But in this alternate history, Nelson is mortally wounded earlier in the battle, or the French fleet, employing a new, daring strategy, outmaneuvers the British at the outset. Britain loses decisively. The immediate consequences are profound. France gains temporary control of the English Channel. British ports face blockades, disrupting trade and delaying reinforcements. The economy, already under strain from years of war, begins to falter. Political factions within Britain grow bold, calling for new leadership and questioning the country's ability to project power across the globe. This single event triggers a chain reaction. Without control of the seas, Britain loses the ability to defend its colonies effectively. French, Spanish, and American powers see opportunities to expand, reshaping global politics. The loss of naval dominance is not just a military setback. It is a transformation that touches every aspect of British influence worldwide. This is only the beginning. The consequences of this naval defeat will ripple across Europe, Asia, Africa, and the Americas, redefining the world order. Without dominance of the seas, Britain struggles to maintain its global position. The Napoleonic Wars, instead of ending with a decisive British-led coalition victory, extend far longer. France consolidates its hold over continental Europe. Countries that once relied on Britain for support, including Spain, Portugal, and parts of Italy, now face French expansion with little hope of assistance. Colonial supply lines falter. India, the crown jewel of Britain's empire, becomes vulnerable to local uprisings and foreign interference. The East India Company struggles to maintain control as French influence expands, encouraging rebellion and unrest. The Caribbean and West African colonies, dependent on secure shipping routes, experience economic instability as French privateers seize British merchant ships. At home, Britain experiences political turmoil. The loss fuels debates in Parliament over whether to increase military spending, invest in industrial infrastructure, or limit colonial ambitions. Newspapers detail repeated naval failures, creating public unease and eroding confidence in the government. The nation begins to question the very idea of empire without control of the seas. These short-term consequences are only the start. The loss of naval supremacy sets in motion a series of changes that will dramatically alter Europe's balance of power and challenge Britain's traditional dominance in global affairs. By the 1820s, the global balance of power has shifted dramatically. France, now unchallenged at sea, uses its naval superiority to expand colonial influence. Territories that might have remained under British control come under French administration. The United States, recognizing Britain's weakened position, begins to assert itself as a naval power, expanding its trade and influence in the Caribbean and the Pacific. Britain, struggling to maintain global influence, redirects efforts toward defending its remaining colonies and ports. Industrialization continues, but unevenly. In French-controlled territories, the adoption of new technologies accelerates, while Britain's economy suffers from lost trade and rising debt. The traditional flow of resources from colonies to Britain slows dramatically, forcing domestic industries to adapt to scarcity. In Asia, the absence of strong British influence allows regional powers to operate with greater autonomy. The Qing dynasty in China experiences less pressure from European powers, delaying the conflicts and treaties that historically opened China to foreign trade. In India, local rulers regain some autonomy, and French-backed forces challenge British authority. The colonial map of Asia looks far different, with a patchwork of semi-independent states replacing what would have been a unified British administration. Political and economic instability in Britain leads to social reforms. Opposition parties gain traction, advocating for domestic policies that address economic inequality and social unrest. Yet these reforms occur under the shadow of international uncertainty, creating a sense of urgency and national insecurity that permeates British society. The ripple effects of this naval defeat continue to grow. Trade, diplomacy, and military power are all reshaped, forcing Britain to navigate a world that is no longer dominated by its fleet. By the mid 19th century, Britain is no longer the uncontested superpower it once was. Its former colonies seek greater independence. France extends its influence in Africa and Asia, establishing trade networks and colonies that rival Britain's former empire. The United States emerges as a dominant naval and economic power earlier than in our timeline, reshaping global trade and diplomacy. Culturally and socially, Britain adapts to this diminished position. Its literature, science, and innovation continue, but without the financial and cultural support of a vast empire, progress slows in key areas. Social tensions grow as the working class faces economic challenges, while the aristocracy struggles to maintain prestige without overseas territories to assert dominance. Globally, the consequences are profound. Trade routes once monopolized by Britain fracture into regional networks controlled by different powers. Alliances shift as nations seek to exploit the power vacuum. Wars occur differently. Treaties are negotiated under new pressures, and the colonial map is rewritten entirely. The loss of naval supremacy also accelerates changes in diplomacy. Britain is no longer able to act as the arbiter of European conflicts. France, the United States, and rising powers take the lead, often in ways that challenge the balance of power. By the end of the century, Britain is just one among several influential nations rather than the dominant global authority it once was. The decline is not catastrophic, but it is transformative. Britain's empire shrinks, its global influence diminishes, and the world enters a new era defined by multipolarity rather than British supremacy. If you find it fascinating how one naval defeat reshapes the entire world order, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. More alternate history scenarios are coming, showing how pivotal moments could have rewritten our world. Without the empire's wealth and power, life in Britain changes dramatically. Industrial cities grow more slowly as overseas trade declines. Economic challenges hit working-class populations hardest, while the aristocracy adapts to maintain influence in a shrinking empire. Political reforms accelerate, with greater attention to workers' rights, education, and domestic governance. Social movements emerge earlier, fueled by the pressures of a less powerful but still resilient nation. Scientific exploration and discovery also shift. British-led expeditions to Africa, Antarctica, and the Pacific are delayed or never occur, leaving other powers to map and exploit territories that Britain might have claimed. The absence of British dominance in these regions changes the trajectory of global scientific knowledge, trade routes, and cultural influence. Culturally, Britain becomes more inward-focused, its people reflecting on a world where national pride is no longer tied to imperial power. Literature, arts, and political thought respond to this new reality, producing works that explore themes of decline, resilience, and adaptation. This is a Britain that adapts, survives, and evolves, but never regains the unparalleled global influence it once held. Could Britain rise again, or is it destined to remain a secondary power among emerging global powers? The answer depends on how flexible society and leadership can be in a world defined by multipolarity and competition. By the end of the 19th century, the world looks drastically different. Britain, once the master of the seas, has lost its monopoly on power. France, the United States, and regional empires dominate trade, culture, and military influence. The Napoleonic Wars, the Industrial Revolution, and global colonization all unfold differently, with consequences that touch every continent. The most remarkable lesson is how fragile history can be. A single naval defeat creates a chain reaction that reshapes the entire planet. The world that exists today could have been unrecognizable if Britain had lost its supremacy at sea. If exploring alternate histories like this fascinates you, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Give this video a like to support more deep dives into pivotal moments that could have rewritten our world. Every decision, every battle, every choice in history has consequences far beyond what we imagine. History is not just a record of what happened. It is a tapestry of possibilities, and sometimes imagining what might have been helps us understand the world we live in today.